Hey, welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Your Miami Heat, the road trip comes to an end. They lose 119-110 in a frustrating ending. You know, sometimes in games like this, I'm always like, man, in that third quarter, it started to look like this looks like the last day of a 2-week road trip, and the Heat were about to let go of the rope. But to their credit, they did not. And the Miami Heat went ham from the three-point line. They started nailing everything known to man, backed by, led mostly by Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro. These dudes could not miss and brought Miami all the way back from the depths of hell of this game. Even Bam Adebayo got in action with a couple of threes in the third and fourth quarter. And, you know, it really seemed like, all right, maybe Miami was going to bring this thing all the way back. You get to a point where Duncan Robinson ties this puppy up at 97 apiece. But unfortunately, this was kind of like this, you know, mind you, this was a game. It's very hard to beat the same team back to back. And the Pacers, I think, are a pretty decent team. They got a lot of talent. But you also know that they got embarrassed the last game, especially the starters. If you guys didn't know the backstory on it, they talked about this a little bit in the pregame if you watched the game. But, you know, Carlisle was really, Rick Carlisle, Pacers coach, was like really, you know, frustrated by what they had done the last game around. And so you definitely felt a Pacers team bringing a much more spirited effort. The loose balls, playing all over the place, flying all over the place. And you know, there were just a couple of those scramble moments that they just got the best of that felt like it was the difference in this one. And the one that's going to stick with you is right after the Heat tied up 97-97. They come all the way back. Duncan Robinson hits a three. Tyrese Halliburton, there's a scramble. McConnell gets the loose ball, kicks it out to Halliburton. He hits it. They're back up by three. And then Nico misses a three, and Halliburton comes back, hits another one from downtown. So they're now up 6, and they have this cushion. And that was basically what felt like to me. That basically felt like the killer. Like you had come all the way back, but your lead had lasted like that much. And so, unfortunately, you know, Miami would still put a valiant effort on it. There was a Tyler Herro doing his thing again today, just going absolutely nuclear. He hits back-to-back threes. He had a back-to-back threes that got to Miami within 4, but Miami just couldn't respond with a late stoppage. And TJ McConnell was, I mean, he was feeding Duncan Robinson buckets, dude. He was like going right at him, throwing stuff over his head. You couldn't take Duncan out necessarily because Duncan was hitting you some big-time shots, but Miami was able to get it to there was a key play late after Nico gets shaken out of his shoes and Miles Turner hits a 3, puts Indiana up 7. They come out of the break. Nico's fouled by Pascal Siakam, and so no time comes off the clock. They're down 5, but like they bring J. Rich in for defense, but he doesn't bring Haywood Highsmith in for defense, Spo, and instead McConnell just blows by Duncan Robinson like nothing. They go up 7, and that was pretty much all she wrote. They'd end up winning by 9, and you know, a spirited effort by Miami. I appreciate them not lying down, even though that's kind of what the game was starting to trend towards. The fourth quarter was bananas from a shooting perspective for Miami, but they just couldn't get stops. You know, they basically played Indiana to a push, and they needed to win that quarter. And it just felt like every time they had a big 3, Indiana was just doing enough, responding with a 2 or a big 3. Like it just, they couldn't get that key stop. And I don't really understand why Haywood Highsmith didn't get that much run in this game. He did not have a shot going, but I'm just talking about in those situations when you're bleeding and you need a stop. You know, why you don't throw him out there when you know the hub of offense is pretty much going to be Bam, Tyler, Duncan. Why Haywood Highsmith's not necessarily in there. That one didn't make a lot of sense to me. And then he brought in, you know, he kind of looked like he was rats off a ship on Terry Rozier, but then he brought J. Rich back in, which was strange. There was like 4 minutes left. He brings Rozier back in for J. Rich, but And so maybe he just thought Jay Rich was tired. I don't know if he thought that Jay Rich was playing too many minutes or what. But he goes back to Rozier, who, just gave you nothing today, especially in the second half. He had looked in some moments like he was really giving you some bounce, some like second chance opportunities and things like that. But man, he is in a funk right now. He is in a funk, and I'm doing this. Mind you, I'm doing this before Eric Spoelstra's really asked about what the deal is with Terry Rozier. But all in all, with this one, you got absolutely bludgeoned by the big duo of Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam. Miles Turner today finished with 34 points. He was 5 of 8 from downtown, 9 rebounds. And the Miami just couldn't match that attack in the paint. Pascal Siakam today, he had 23 points. And Benedict Mathurin had a really nice game. And the thing that sucks is, Halliburton, the killer with those 2 shots where Halliburton was not having a good game. And then all of a sudden he just explodes. Similarly with Tyler, like Tyler was not having a good game either. And then he starts hitting a crazy amount of threes. He ends up 7 of 11 from downtown. And with 28 points, I think 19 of those were in the fourth quarter today from Tyler. Yeah. Tyler was in the fourth quarter, 5 of 7, 5 of 6 from downtown. That was crazy. But they couldn't find any ways to stop it. And I think Eric Spoelstra is going to be doing like a lot of, he's got to be doing a lot of soul searching on like what exactly the right combinations are going to be for this Heat team. Because I think we keep saying this, I feel like this is a team, you watch this road trip where Miami finishes 2-4. And obviously, anytime on the road, usually the goal is on a big road trip, like to go 500. That's like the ideal goal. If you can have an over 500 road trip, man, that's a crazy successful road trip, especially one that's this long. But you just have so many games on this trip where you're just kicking yourself. And really it's going back to the Kings game, but the Suns game was very, very close. The Nuggets game was probably like the most one where you're like, all right, got handled. They couldn't stop scoring. Even there was some valiant effort by Miami. But it's a night like tonight where you look to the Pistons game, you're like, man, I can't believe they let that slip away. Because if you're going home today and you split with the Pacers and you were 3-3 because you won that Pistons game, you're feeling fantastic. But there's just a feeling from Miami, where are they at right now? In this game, Nico, it could seem like the mask was bothering him a little bit more. Didn't necessarily have the touch they did the last game, but still got to the free throw line a bunch. He finished with 14 points, pretty solid production. Obviously, Spo's trusting him more because he's playing him late, which is great for Nico. But yeah, he's got to be having some soul searching going on because Kevin Love, you can't expect to give you what he did the other night, where he absolutely just thumps this team out of the gate. Like Kevin's going to give you to that probably like once every 4 or 5 games. He's not going to do that every single night. Tonight just wasn't one of those nights for Kevin, and they got abused. Haywood couldn't get anything to drop, but was he rats off a ship on the on needing him on defense? He's probably one of your best defenders on the team, so you have to keep that in mind. Terry's obviously going through it right now. But as far as the bench was concerned, Duncan obviously had a great night. From the offensive perspective, he got a little bit abused defensively. But that's going to be the give and take with him sometimes, especially, I think the disappointing thing is it's a guy like McConnell at the end who's getting after him. And then the other piece of bad news for Miami out of this one is the Jaime element, because Jaime twisted his ankle. It looked pretty bad. He had to be helped back. I can't imagine he's going to play tomorrow. Like that's out of the realm of possibility. But just in the fact of like he was coming off a nice performance, he was searching for a little bit tonight. He didn't really have his offensive bag going for him. And from that perspective, you're just hoping for him it's a speedy recovery, and that isn't going to be something that lasts too long for him. But yeah, man, this was definitely one of those games where I think the effort was valiant. They probably didn't deserve to win the game, but it would have been nice. It would have showed a lot for Miami to pull this one out tonight. They got their butts kicked on the boards again. The points in the paint tonight, 62-28 in points in the paint tonight. And that's the element too where you're just like, all right, is Bam just supposed to do it like all by himself? Like, are they gonna ever think about cracking open Kel'el Ware? Like, Kel'el Ware didn't play tonight in a game like this, and you're kind of searching for stuff. You just think about you do think about things like that. I wonder, what the deal is there. I don't think this was. I don't know. I don't think this was Spo's finest road trip by any means. Obviously, he lost them a game, and then, it kind of felt like on the one end you're relying on crazy threes, but there was no adjustment or combination to try and find some means to slow these guys down. I know it's a very talented offensive team. I mean, we know we've seen that from them, but I don't know. That was I would have figured he would have thrown a bit of a changeup somewhere along the way in the fourth quarter when they just couldn't find any stops, and it seemed like it was, let me throw in Terry Rozier for more offense, because like, why would anybody be shooting besides Bam, Duncan, or certainly Tyler Herro, who is, nuclear red hot. And I feel bad for Tyler because, damn, bro, these are some incredible fourth quarters that he's putting together, and none of them are resulting in wins. It's a crazy element. So, but I do think on the positive side of the road trip, Bam finding his offensive game today, it wasn't like feeding buckets like the last game. It was a tough game for him as far as like getting in the paint and whatnot. But he finished with 24 points, 8 rebounds. He had some really tough buckets on Miles Turner, who's obviously has a lot of size on him. Hit a couple of threes. He wasn't scared to shoot today. He took 18 shots, so like I want that from him. Like, I don't want a gun-shy Bam, and him and Tyler Herro, I think, did their part from that perspective. It was just this was not a great defensive performance from Miami. I don't think that they're going to look back on this and be like, oh, that was great. They end up having a game where they're coming down to the wire, and it's really built on just how crazy they were shooting. But they shot 40% overall. Pacers today shot 52%. Like I said, probably not a game they really deserve to win anyway. So, all in all, the road trip is, if we kind of put a review on it, like, they finished 2-4. The one that's going to sting the most is obviously the Pistons game, because one, you got an all-world Tyler Herro performance, nearly a career game from him, and you blew that. So that one's the one that's going to stick with you. The Suns game was fairly competitive. You obviously got a great game from you got a great night on this one from Haywood Highsmith, and you went down to the wire, and Kevin Durant hit some tough buckets at the end. You lost Jimmy Butler in the midst of the road trip. That was another thing that was strange with today, is Jimmy he was listed. It was interesting because I remember shutting off the recording and thinking, man, I made it such a stupid point to you guys, because I thought that he played on Tuesday. I didn't realize I effed up, and I was thinking about next week and Thanksgiving week, and so I didn't think that they played on Monday. I was like, because it's just a weird schedule. I was like, why would the Heat have 5 days off, but they play a back-to-back? That just didn't make sense to me. So when I was talking to you guys about thinking when Jimmy was going to come back, I was like, oh yeah, I could see him coming back, but not realizing that the Heat had a back-to-back. And when I, already uploaded the video, I was like, oh, that was a stupid point to make, because there's no way Jimmy Butler's coming to play the front end of a back-to-back. Makes no sense. But lo and behold, I didn't feel like I looked like that much of an idiot, because then in the middle of yesterday, the Heat report he's questionable, and then the reporters, Ira and Anthony, and they were reporting he was expected to make his return. And he was working hard. They showed him working out. And then I don't know if the Heat just went ultra conservative all of a sudden, and they were like, never mind, because they could have used Jimmy tonight, man. Oh, man. Tonight was a patented night where you could have used Jimmy Butler to get a big stop on somebody, to throw at some bodies. Like, man, they could use him. You know, that was definitely evident. But either way, I guess we can hope that he's going to be back for this Sixers game. Apparently, Joel Embiid is questionable with an illness. They don't have Maxey right now. They're obviously really, really struggling. But they've been in Miami since, I think, Friday night. So hopefully they've partied their asses off to the point where they're going to be pooped, because the Heat will be pooped. They'll be, I hate these first home games off a long road trip, and certainly off a back-to-back. This is one of those games where, like, I would almost, if I was Eric Spoelstra, if Jimmy's not back, like, I would almost shake it up with the starting lineup just to give a new look, give something funky, because this feels like one of those you could just sleepwalk through. And you certainly don't want to do that. You got a lot of familiar faces too. Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry. They're going to bring their pain in the ass competitive to try and show Spo up. So that'll be an interesting thing to check on. But that was, it was strange, but it was only strange because I think it was weird it was weird to have the idea that he was going to come back for this one game. Like, why would they even say that and then they'd pull back on it? Like, maybe they didn't realize either. Like, oh yeah, we have a back-to-back. Because I was honestly shocked by it. I was like, wait, do we have a back-to-back? Like, and yeah, they did. They had a back-to-back. So I'll be boots on the ground tomorrow for it. So we'll, if he does, we'll get a first-hand look at it, and that means tomorrow's recap will be up a little bit later for you guys. But I did find that strange, and if he was able to go tonight, or if they were concerned, like, I kind of just feel like, I know that's usually the MO with Jimmy, but then it's almost like, all right, well then do you just sit him tomorrow and then just give him off the rest of the week because they're going to practice this week? Or do you want to just, like, was that the whole point? Because they showed him before pregame, he looked good. The drills he was showing, he looked good. This didn't look like a person who was very, very far off, but obviously that was confusing and frustrating to see from the Heat's perspective. But mostly because the road trip ends in a bit of a thud, and the Miami Heat are, they're in there right now with a lot of these East teams that are just kind of meandering. Most of the East is just like floundering around 500. You got 3 teams that are over, and I just think that. But the thing is, like, you do need at some point, if you do need Miami to go on a run at some point. And they do feel like they've squandered some things, especially the Kings game, the Pistons game. I don't really count tonight, but Miami's felt like they've had some opportunities along the way to probably at least be at 500 or game over 500, and instead they sit here still mired in 2 games under. Now they do have some daylight coming up because you have a Sixers team that's obviously struggling. Bucks, Hornets, Raptors before you get into you get to December, but you close out. They will have an opportunity to close out November with a little bit of a chance to get that record better. But for right now, it is what it is. It's about what they've been, which is even Steven, can't keep it consistent even through a game. That's been a tough thing to get a grip of. But tonight, an end of road trip bitter pill to swallow, to fly back with, and they got to put it out of their mind quick because they got to get right back at it on Monday night.